credit man.
Hey credit man. Hey credit man. Hey credit man. Hey credit man. Hey credit man. Credit man. Credit man. Hey credit man. Credit man.
All right, guys, what's up, man? Y'all know who I am, Dwayne the Credit Man. This is another episode of Credit Talk, the late version. I know I'm super late, but I had to run the playing field and handle some business. So again, my name is Dwayne the Credit Man. I'm the owner of Reid Financial Solutions, which is a credit repair company. I'm also a part owner of SAM Properties, which is a real estate company. I'm also part owner of Reid Tax and Business Services, which is a tax company. I'm also part owner of Reid Exotics, which is a car rental company. And I'm also a best-selling author of my first book, Understanding Credit by Dwayne Credit Man Reid. Hope everybody's having a good week. So if you guys are wondering how I'm able to come here and sit down and talk to you guys about these different topics every single week, because I'm actually doing what I'm talking to you guys about. Last King, what up, what up, what up? Shout out to the Credit Man. Ask the Credit Boss. I appreciate you, bro. Butterfly Diva, what's going on? Hope all is well, hope all is well. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in, but we're going to make this quick because I am super duper late and I still got stuff to do. So let's get into this, man. So today I want to talk about collection accounts, right? Lately I've been seeing a lot of things about collections, don't pay collections, whatever. So I said, we haven't had an episode about collection accounts in a while, so we're going to have an episode about collection accounts. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. We'll talk about it. But tonight we're just going to talk about how to deal with collection accounts as you, the consumer, right? So a lot of times, for those that don't know what a collection account is, a collection account could be anything from a cable bill, old credit card. It could be an old car loan, whatever. So usually what happens is these companies, they turn around, you have a contract with them, right? And let's say you agree to pay Comcast, $400 a month for your cable. You default on that payment, the payment ends up going bad, and all of a sudden, you don't have cable no more, right? Usually what happens is Comcast is going to sell your debt to a collection agency. Now, once that collection agency buys your debt, they're going to try to reach out to you, and they're going to end up putting it on your credit report, right? But before they even buy that debt from the company, right, the company's going to try to reach out to you first. If they can't reach you, what's going to happen is they're going to sell that debt to to the collection agency from Comcast for pennies on the dollar. So let's say, for instance, you owe Comcast $400. They might sell that debt for $150, and the collection company ends up calling you and say, hey, you owe us $400. So technically what the collection agency does is they buy the contract for the debt, right? They don't buy the actual debt. They buy the contract on the debt, right? So now they say that you legally now owe them $400, right? So they'll call you, say, hey, you owe us this money, blah, 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 put it on your credit report. So here's where the fun part starts. Now, a lot of people always wonder, how do you really handle collection accounts? A lot of people tell you ignore them. Don't do nothing because you didn't do nothing. What they say? They say ignore collection agencies because you didn't sign no contract with them. That's false. What collection agencies do is they buy the contract. Now, if you go back to your original contract, you'll see in it, it says these companies have the right to sell your debt to whoever they want. You know what I'm saying? So they can definitely legally sell your debt to whoever they want. So once they buy it, they own it. Now, let's say, for instance, let's talk about Capital One, because y'all know I love to talk about Capital One, right? Because that whole breakdown, how it usually happens. So let's say, for instance, you had a Capital One credit card. You ran the card up to $1,000, right? You owe Capital One $1,000 now. Capital One now reaches out to you for the $1,000. You don't want to pay it. You don't want to pay it. What ends up happening, they end up charging off that account, right? Once they charge off that account, they sell your debt to a collection agency. So now you have the Capital One on your credit report, it's charged off, and then you have a collection agency on your credit report, right? So usually what happens is people will tell you, hey, don't settle, don't talk to the collection agencies. You didn't do nothing to them. You didn't sign no contract with them. That's false. They're allowed to sell your collection debt to whoever they want as long as they're going to collect on it, right? So now here's the thing. So now they sold the collection debt, right? They sold the collection debt to the whatever collection company. Let's say you owe them $1,000, right? Now let's say they try to reach out to you and you say, you know what, I'm ignoring you guys. I didn't sign up nothing with you guys. I'm not doing no business with you guys. I'm going to call Comcast. When you call Comcast is going to tell you we no longer owe that debt. Such and such now owes that debt, so you got to call them. You're going to say, well, I didn't sign no contract with them, so I'm going to ignore it. What's going to happen is if you ignore it long enough, they're going to take you to court and they're going to sue you. And guess what's going to happen when they sue you? They're going to win. Because 9 times out of 10, you're not going to show up to court because someone told you that you don't have to do business with a collection agency. Doing business with the collection agency is not really your choice. You know what I'm saying? Because they own the debt. So here's a couple things you want to do anytime you're dealing with a collection agency. Or you can just come to us and we'll take care of it for you. But here's what you got to do. Step 1. Once you get that collection letter, right, you got to verify that everything on that letter is correct. The balance is correct. The date is correct. Make sure they have everything on that letter correct, right? But here's the thing. A lot of people get the collection letters and throw them to the side. No, don't throw them to the side. What you want to do is called a validation letter, right? Now, this is the quickest way to get out of a collection account, right? That collection company Let me put it like this. Anytime you go to court, right? And anytime you get called to court because you're being sued by a collection agency, 9 times out of 10, they do not bring the verification paperwork with them, right? I got countless clients that called me and say, hey, I want to go to, I went to court and I said I didn't know about the paperwork and they couldn't prove that it was mine and it was dismissed. I had a friend of mine who had a $10,000 Navy Federal credit union credit card. He went to court. They couldn't prove it was his. Case was dismissed. You know what I'm saying? Not saying it goes away, but it gets dismissed where they got to be able to prove that that debt belongs to you, right? So the case gets dismissed, you leave, right? So that happens all the time, but 9 times out of 10, we don't go to court. So I always tell people, if you're getting sued, go to court. All you got to do is go in there and say, hey, I don't know what this is. They have to prove that it's yours. If they can't prove that it's yours, it gets dismissed. But even if they are able to prove that it is yours, now you can tell them like, all right, cool. I want to settle it. Can we go on a payment plan? You can pay $50 a month for the next 3 years. Usually the court leads towards the consumer. They don't really lean towards the people that's suing. They're not going to try to diminish your stuff. Usually, only time they want to take stuff out of your, take your bank account. I thought I heard something. The only time they want to take money out your bank account is when you're not in court and they ask for to take money out your paycheck or take the money out your bank account. So let's say for instance now, so let's say the collection agency is now on your credit report. Step one you want to do when you get that letter in the mail, you want to make sure everything on that letter is correct. Now the collection agency is not allowed to charge you any fees on top of what you owe. They're not allowed to charge you any interest or nothing like that, right? Not allowed to charge you nothing like that. Outside of that letter, it can't say Capital One, you owe Capital One, you owe this, you owe that. They can't say none of that outside the letter, right? And I got some notes here because I want to be precise about this stuff, right? Let me see. I screenshot it earlier, but I don't know. Oh, here it is. Okay, cool. All right, so the first thing, so let's start with paying off a collection. A lot of people think, let me just pay this collection and get rid of it, right? Here's the problem with that. If that collection is on your credit report, they need to take it off your credit report. And a lot of people don't, you like to hear the term pay to delete. That's not a real thing. Now, as a courtesy, they might remove it off your credit report, but they don't have to remove it off your credit report, right? So the first thing people do is they say, you know what? I'm just going to pay this collection account and get it off of my credit report. Usually what ends up happening, you end up paying it. They end up updating it that it's paid and makes it 10 times harder to come off the credit report because you paid it. So you pretty much agreed that the debt belonged to you. So you paid the debt. And then all of a sudden it sits on your credit report as paid and it just sits there. So you always have this collection account on your credit report for the next 2 to 3 years until it actually falls off your credit report, right? So don't just pay the collections. That shouldn't be your step one. That should be your last step. So your first step is to do what's called a verification letter. You pretty much write the collection agency and say, hey, I don't recognize this debt. I need you to send me verification that you own this debt. What they're going to do is they either got to send you the contract, they got to send you a bill, they got to send you something that only you or the original creditor would have had, or like let's say in this case Capital One. Usually what they do, they'll send you a bill. They'll send you like your last bill that showed it was charged off to prove that they actually own that debt. Now you see a lot of these credit gurus that's telling you, oh, ask them for this and written this and written. They don't have to supply none of that. All right. A verification is nothing but them proving that they own that debt. All they got to do is send you the last bill. Maybe they'll send you the statement that, what they sent to Capital One or what Capital One sent them saying that they own the debt now. That's all they got to do for verification. Now, say for instance, you send out that verification, they send you back, they verify it. But if they can't verify it, they have to remove it off your credit report, right? And here's another thing. When they sell that debt to someone else, they have to remove it off your credit report. A lot of times people don't realize you'll have 2 separate collection agencies on your credit report, and both of them have the same debt because we don't understand these simple laws, right? So you got to make sure they remove it off your credit report. So don't just pay it and ask for the verification letter. Now, what's next? Now, another thing people might not realize, right? Let's say you had a collection account on your credit report and it's been on there for a while. Let's say it's the last thing on your credit report and you want to pay it. Understanding that paying that collection account when it's already on your report for a long time, because what happens is over time, as that collection account ages, your score tends to go back up because it's aging, it's getting older, it doesn't have as much impact as it had, right? But now because you paid it, guess what you just did? You just re-aged it, you recycled it, and the impact goes back into your credit score again and drops your credit score. So don't just pay your old collection account because it's there. Remember, make sure all the information is correct. That's the money you actually owe. Make sure they can verify it with a letter, right? And don't just pay it. Here's another thing. So that can actually lower your credit score, right? And we talked about that already. You own the buyer, not the original creditor. We know about that. And another thing that they can't do, they can't threaten to arrest you. They can't threaten to take you to jail. They can't threaten to come to your job. They can't threaten you and do none of that stuff. That's called harassment. And you can actually sue them for that. So if you have a collection agency that's constantly calling you and they constantly threatening you and harassing you and threatening, telling you what they're going to do to you and they're going to call the police on you, that's actually illegal for them to do that. Also, there's a certain time they got to call you by. They got to call between the hours, I believe, 8 and 8 p.m. They can't call you before 8 a.m. and they can't call you after 8 p.m. If they do, you can sue them for that. And a lot of people don't realize you got people that sit home and deal with this all day and just sue collection agencies all day and get $1,200 to $1,500 and get the debt deleted off their credit report. So they follow very strict rules. So remember, if you have a collection account, the first thing you want to do is that verification. If they can't verify it, make sure if they can't verify it, they have to remove it by law. They have to remove it off your credit report, right? And they only have, when you send that verification letter in, they only have 30 days to respond, right? And make sure you send it certified so that way you can know they got it. Make sure they sign for it so that way they got to send you back whatever they got to send back for it. Paying a collection account should be your last step. That's it, should be the last step. Now, the only time I say to pay a collection account is if it's something new and it didn't hit your credit report yet. So let's say, for instance, you owe Comcast $400, right? It was your last bill. The collection agency calls you and say, hey, we're calling on behalf of Comcast. You owe us $400. I always tell people, hey, is it on my credit report? No, we didn't put it on your credit report. They usually tell you, we're going to put it on your credit report in 14 days. Okay, cool. I'll give you $250 for it. Pay the $250, save yourself $150, and it doesn't go on your credit report. And a lot of times, if they do put on your credit report, it'll come right off. That's why you tell people that's the only time you should pay a collection agency is if it's new and it didn't hit your credit report yet. The minute it hits your credit report, that's when you go into Plan B and you start doing all this other stuff to try to get it off your credit report, right? Another thing with collection agencies, you got to understand, if they are suing you, don't ignore it. Go to court, because 9 times out of 10 it's going to go your way. So go to court. Don't just ignore them suing you. Don't do that. That's the worst thing you can do. So make sure you go to court. You can also, if you have a lot of collection accounts on your credit report and you got people constantly calling you, you can literally send them a letter and tell them stop calling you. It's really that simple. Send them a letter saying, hey, please only contact me by mail. Do no longer contact me by the phone, right? This is what you do. Once you do that, you send them that letter. Again, send it certified. Make sure they sign for it, right? Every time they call you, you can sue them for $1,200 to $1,500 a pop. So they call you. Don't even remind them that you said don't call them. Hey, who's this? Make sure you get one of them little apps that record the phone call. Hey, who's this? From what company? And what's your name? What's your ID number? Okay, cool. Please don't call me on the phone no more. Remember, you already sent them the letter. You know they got the letter because you saw the signature, right? So every time they do that, you can sue them and you can get the debt removed off your credit report. These are the legal ways that you can actually get these collections off your credit report. Now, if this sounds like too much work, just give us a call and we'll do it all for you. You know what I'm saying? We'll take care of everything for you. We'll get those collection accounts off in no time. You know what I'm saying? Usually we don't have a lot of issues with collections. The only collection accounts I tend to tell people to take care of is those collection companies that I know is going to sue you for the debt that I know they're going to sue you for. All right? So that's usually when I tell people, hey, pay this debt because they're going to come back for you. And a lot of times people ignore me. And then what ends up happening is they're in the supermarket one day with $200 worth of groceries and they go to swipe that card and it comes back declined. They don't know why. Then they call that bank and realize they overdrawn how much money. They don't know what's going on. They call their bank in the morning. Hey, you had a lawsuit. They froze your bank account and they took the money out. That happens all the time, and people come back and try to blame me, and I'm like, no, I told you to pay that. I told you to pay that debt because they're going to sue. So it's certain banks out here that's going to sue you, and I like to let my clients know who's going to sue, what to take care of. If you don't listen to me, you just don't listen to me. If you feel like you want to risk it, because they could sue you tomorrow, or they could sue you in 2 years. Lawsuits are real. I remember one time I was at work, I just got paid, and I got my check, and when I went to the bank, because back in the day, they give you a check and you used to cash it, right? So I had direct deposit. So what I did was I had just set up my direct deposit. They was like, oh, your check didn't go through yet in direct deposit. This was back in the day. They was like, we're going to give you this check, but your next check should go through. I'm like, all right, cool. I used to get $500 a week. My check was $220. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So I went back and said, yo, what happened to my check? They was like, oh, you got garnished. I was like, what you mean I got garnished? She's like, yeah, you got garnished. I was like, what's the garnish? They said, oh, you got sued, and they take 10% of your check every single week until you pay off the debt. I'm like, what are you talking about? I go to the HR department and they say, here's the information. It was for, I don't know if you guys remember this. I might be aging myself. But this was Providian credit cards. They used to have a company called Providian that used to have credit cards. They were like a high-risk credit card company. They gave me a credit card with $500. I used it, didn't pay it. My mother told me this is going to mess up your credit. At the time, I didn't care about my credit. They ended up suing me and taking the money from me and took it out of my bank account. For the next 4 weeks, I was eating oodles and noodles. I had just got my apartment. I only paid my rent, my car note, and my insurance. That's it. That's all I was able to afford. I was able to afford nothing else because they sued me and took my damn money. I remember one week I said, you know what? I'm going to work overtime. I talked to my boss. I said, yo, can I get some extra hours? I worked 20 hours overtime thinking that was going to compensate and bring my check back up. That's when I realized they take 10% of your entire check, not just your basic check. So whatever you get paid for 40 hours, if you work 60 hours, they're gonna take 10% of your 60 hours. I ended up giving them like another like $300. I was so mad at the time. I was so mad. I'm like, yo, I'm not working no more overtime. Don't worry about it. Forget it. I was so mad. So I ended up paying that debt off, and that's how I learned about the court system and being sued. Because I got the court papers in the mail, and I remember I threw them down. I didn't care, and I ended up losing because I didn't go to court. You know what I'm saying? You got people. That's all they do is sue people all day and get paid for it. So that's why I need you guys to understand how important it is when it comes to dealing with these collection agencies. Stop listening to these credit gurus that's telling you you don't owe this collection debt. Yes, you do. You just got to be smart about it and know how to get around paying that collection debt. Don't just ignore it, because that's the worst thing you could do. You know what I'm saying? So if y'all got any questions, go ahead and ask the questions. Let me see if there's anything I missed when it comes to collection accounts. But I'm gonna make some videos about collections and how to deal with them, so that way you guys can have everything. Let me see. Oh, one more thing. When it comes to collections, there's something called the statute of limitations. We talk about this all the time. This is the number one reason why people get out of paying debt, right? Now, I'm in New Jersey. A statute of limitation in New Jersey is 6 years. That means that after a contract is signed and you make your last payment, not when you started, you made your last payment. So let's say, for instance, that Capital One account that we discussed earlier, right, that you owe $1,000 on. Let's say that was 6 years ago. The collection agency calls you 6 years and 1 month later, right? And they're going to say, hey, can you owe us $1,000. Just make a payment of $50 today, and we'll set up a nice payment plan. Do not make that payment. Understand that if you are past 6 years, by law, you do not owe that debt anymore. Do not pay it, because once you pay on that account, guess what happens? You re-age that account. It starts over again, right? So now it goes back to zero. So now what can they do? Now they can show, hey, you made a payment. Now they can take you to court and sue you. I have a lot of clients that fell for that had debt that was 10 years old, made one payment on it, the clock started over again, and now they have another 6 years to collect that debt. Don't fall for that. It's called a statute of limitation. That's for every debt that you own. I don't care if it's Comcast, I don't care if it's Capital One, certain student loans, even certain student loans. The private student loans, after 6 years, you do not owe it. So if you can wait it out 6 years and not make a payment, you do not owe that stuff. I don't care if it's a car note. I don't care if it's a whatever it is. The statute of limitations is 6 years on written contracts. So understand that that's another way to get out of debt, especially when that debt is already old. I've had people that called me and said, hey, you owe this debt from 2012. And I'm like, oh, that's too old. They're like, oh, no, this follows the federal statute. There's no such thing as the federal statute. Every state has their own statute of limitations. Then they go by the state. So don't let them fool you and tell you, hey, this doesn't apply here. All right, so that's the last one, the statute of limitations. That's very important. But if y'all got any questions, go ahead and ask. If not, I'm going to jump up out of here and get up out of here. But I told y'all tonight's show was going to be quick, going to be short and sweet. We're going to get to the point. I'm going to start doing that from now on. But if you have collection accounts that you want to work on, hit us up. We're a credit repair company. That's what we do. We help you. We take the work away from you, so you don't got to go through this stuff. You just sign up with us. We look over your credit report, tell you exactly what you need to do, help you get it done, and that's it. But look, I appreciate all you guys for tuning in. If you don't got no questions, we're gonna cut this short. Yeah. But I appreciate you guys for tuning in, man. I'm going to get up out of here. I'm Dwayne the Credit Man. This is another episode of Credit Talk. Appreciate all you guys. Peace.